Welcome everybody to this session. I think as people are settling in, my name is Joel Onyango. I sit with the African Center of Technology Studies, but I'm also a co-facilitator in the session that you're going to have just now. I hope the sessions have been resourceful so far, and there's been quite some takeaway across the sessions. As we get into this session really is about thinking about what are the hindrances to young people being employed in the digital agriculture space. Looking at the previous sessions, we've had people coming in and highlighting already certain challenges that are emerging. So this session is basically to solidify this, bring it to a conversational peak, and hopefully when you go to the showcase, the next session will have some perspective that we can build on. So thank you very much for joining the session. This session is going to have some, group work. So at some point, we'll be forming groups of 6 or so. And then within these groups, we'll be having conversations, trying to reflect on models that can be useful to uplift the young people employment within the digital economy space. To start us off, I think in the interest of our clock, I'd like us to start with a round of panel conversations. And to start us off at the beginning, I'd like to invite one of our esteemed panelists. This is Mr. Kamau Mugure. Mr. Kamau Mugure is a dynamic digital solutions evangelist with years of experience in driving technology innovation in education. But I'll not say much. I'll allow him to introduce himself as he tries to give us an indication of what he thinks the context under which many of the youth are interacting at the moment, especially on the systemic barriers that could be hindering digital agriculture space. Mr. Mugure, over to you.
Hey, Joel, really appreciated, and I'm happy to be here together with my fellow panelists. My name is Kamau Mugure. I'm a project manager at Kuza. I hope I'm audible enough, right? Okay, great. My name is Kamau Mugure. I'm a project manager at Kuza, where we empower rural youth to become agripreneurs through cutting-edge digital solutions. We have 2 solutions, one that we call Rural Entrepreneurship Development Incubator, where we bring in local youth for about 15 weeks, and we help them think agriculture, but with a perspective of entrepreneurship. Then the second solution that we have is that we also have a solution we call One Network, and the whole goal is to increase market participation for the young people. So after the 15 weeks, we're able to send these young agripreneurs to their local communities. We empower them with a digital toolkit. At this juncture, I think I might show one of them. This is an off-grid solution that has content inside it. We have digitized 42 agricultural value chains. And this goes to the community where the young agripreneur is able to meet up with their farmers in the community. They're able to have discussions with them around certain value chains, empowering them to be able to produce more, to be able to participate in the market. And ideally, by now, we have been able to help about 3,500 agripreneurs set up enterprises, agribusiness enterprises, and scale their enterprise. So today, I'm eager to contribute to tackling the systemic barriers hindering youth in digital agriculture, and possibly to co-create bold solutions that I think can unlock their potential. So happy to be here and excited to join you. Asante sana. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamau, for that insight and actually coming with a practical solution as we have this conversation. Our next panelist is Dr. Caroline Mba. Dr. Caroline Mba is a skilled researcher in gender and inclusion with extensive experience in gender mainstreaming, but also leads part of the Green and Digital Innovation Hub in Kenya. Dr. Mba, welcome for the conversation. And as you start off, also just highlight some of the overall systemic barriers that you could think about in this sector. Dr. Mbaya? All right, as we wait for Dr. Mbaya to spring back on, I'll invite Millicent. Millicent said, in the same breath as you introduce yourself, also just thinking broadly about the systemic barriers and being an agricultural value chain and market systems development expert, what would you say about this space that you're talking about, the barriers to young people being employed in the digital agriculture space?
Thank you, Dr. Joel. This is actually a critical question, given that there's that global push to ensure that our farmers embrace digital transformation in agriculture. But again, you discover that there are many barriers that are affecting our farmers across Africa. And when you get to the young people, you discover that it's not just about one systematic barrier, but a series of different systems, from a social perspective to the education to the infrastructure system. And here what we mean is when you look at our young people, especially in the rural areas, we discover that they get more or less limitation in accessing digital platform. And basically this is due to our nature of education system. You discover that at times you're not really relevant to what the market wants. We'll come in, don't have funded, provide the content, then walk away. But again, don't align it to the market. Then again, when you look at access to digital infrastructure, we need these young people to access things like internet connectivity, things like electricity, things like the smart digital access. So when you go to the rural areas, especially, you discover that even the young people don't have the finances to get that bundles, because they want to buy these airtime bundles. They don't have that 10 shillings to get it. At times, there's no electricity to power your digital platform. So at the end of the day, you discover, as much as I'm a young person, especially away from some of this digital infrastructure, I struggle to get access to these devices due to condition that where I am, I'm not empowered financially. I don't have access to electricity, etc. But again, we are saying that we are making progress, because we are looking at how do we come in to empower these young people to get extra income, to get that bundle, to get that extra income to go for solar powered devices. Then when we come back to the young women in Africa, we also understand that gender gaps are also something that we talk about. I'm a young woman in my household. Am I allowed to own this digital device? So as much as my men counterparts will be out there interacting with the platform, but at the end of the day, you discover that I don't have the capacity, if not the time, to even interact with this platform, on condition that due to other household chores that await me, probably when I'm coming from the farm or from school, so it limits my interaction. So again, we are looking at how do we come in to do that social behavior change campaign to say, at the end of the day, how do we ensure there's that inclusivity where anybody can come in and interact with the platform. Then the last one would be the farmers. The key ultimate users will be our farmers. So as much as our young people may want to really come in, address these barriers in accessing this digital platform, how are our farmers empowered to ensure that they're also in a position to make informed decisions, if not embrace these platforms? Because I'm a young person, I'm coming in to trade, maybe to link my farmers to the market, but are the same farmers in that digital platform. So again, there are those challenges where probably farmers will not really feel safe to trade in that digital platform. And we know why. Probably it takes time for me to be paid. At times my goods will get to the market and I'm told it's not of good quality. So again, there's that mistrust between the farmers, who are really the key ultimate users of this digital platform. So when you talk about addressing systematic barriers, I'll say that it starts from putting systems that work for the young people, but again, looking at the ultimate consumers of this information in this platform to ensure that there's that convergence. Thank you, Joel. Over back to the team.
Thank you so much, Sadie, for highlighting those key systemic barriers, from infrastructure to behavior change to cultural perspectives, but also willingness and willingness to take up these solutions. I'll circle back to you, Dr. Mbaya, just also to, as you give your, first bit about what systemic barriers you've seen. And of course, in your work in the Green Digital Hub, thinking about working with different digital solutions and for different sectors. What would be these systemic barriers? And, what is your say on this, Dr. Mbaya?
All right. Thank you so much. Apologies for going offline. So those are some of the systemic barriers, connectivity. Yes, so my name is Caroline Mbaya. I work for the African Center of Technology Studies as a lead for the Gender, Youth and Inclusive Development Program, where we try to match the right technology with our young people, women, and marginalized persons. I'm also the program lead for the Green and Digital Innovation Hub, as Dr. Joel has said. And what we're doing at the hub is to try and make sure that agriculture is being adopted by young people, especially the technology part of it. I think what we've seen is that one of the main barriers, in my opinion, is the lack of digital literacy amongst young people, young farmers, to utilize agricultural technologies. I'll qualify my statement with some findings from recent surveys that we've done. When we set up the hub, we based it actually on mapping of the innovation ecosystem. And so one study by GFA in 2023 showed that the key challenges that are facing entrepreneurs in agriculture are limited access to technology or even access to digital infrastructure. But mainly it was the lack of necessary skills to actually adopt this technology and implement. And then another study that also was done by ACT, and it was commissioned by Fairtrade Africa, also found that Kenya is currently leading in development of digital agricultural apps or solutions. East Africa actually leads with about 217 digital solutions as of 2024. West Africa was at 135 and Central and South Africa was about 85. But what stood out is that despite the fact that East Africa is leading in the development of apps, the adoption of these apps is not as fast as we would like or as we expect, which means that there's a gap. And the gap is that we have an assumption that our people, our farmers or our young people are ready to take up these apps or these digital solutions that we are generating. So when we look at the education system, I don't believe that the fact that we are now in the digital age is going hand in hand with what we're doing in terms of agricultural training. I'm not sure that the education system has captured this. Best of my knowledge, a lot of TVET, training that in agriculture doesn't reflect that, we should be emphasizing on digital agriculture, and that leaves a gap. That means there's still a skills gap on, the kind of things, on how we should be evolving to, agriculture. And this is actually one of the things that we're doing at the hub, is making sure that we match the right skills to young people, especially young farmers who are in, rural areas, because agriculture still remains a rural activity in Kenya. And, as you know, a lot of youth in the rural areas will have limited exposure to ICT, either due to connectivity issues or high cost of devices, or, basic lack of know-how on how to tap onto, resources of digital agriculture. So for us, I think we're trying to bridge that gap using our consortium partner, Carlo, who I think everybody knows, has been at the forefront of making sure digital agriculture and digital and agricultural research actually reaches the farmers. We've had a chance to, train trainers who are then supposed to train farmers with digital agriculture. And I think I'll speak about this a bit later on in, as we discuss. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mban, for highlighting, including some of the statistics. I know questions are coming already on the chat asking about whether these statistics for general apps or for specific agriculture-related apps. But as you think about this, I'd like to circle back to Kamau just very quickly, under a minute. With your app, with your solution, what are the systematic barriers that you're actually seeing to hinder adoption of your work?
Dr. Joel, I think from the onset, I want to agree with what Millicent and Dr. Mbaya have said in terms of limited infrastructure, because from some studies I've looked at, the internet penetration in the rural areas is at 25%. If you go down to access for 4G, is at 10%. So even when you have this good app that you want to get to the farmer, and you're using the agripreneur as the last mile delivery person of the tech to the farmer, then without sufficient access, without sufficient internet, then this does not happen. And maybe that offline digital solution I showed earlier on comes to address such issues. And then number two is in regards to, I know Dr. Mbaya has mentioned lightly about the tools for access to internet. And I want to run you through something quite simple. If you look at possibly drones or IoT devices that are supposed to be used by farmers to improve their production, maybe to check, to estimate soil testing and issues like that. A raw entry drone in Kenya would set you back about 620 USD for you to buy it. But then the licenses, the registration, the insurance that you require would actually set you back between 2,023 USD to about 2,256 USD. So you're talking about, a remote pilot license training, remote operator certificate, registration, medical certificate, all that. So the question is, if this young person is buying the drone at 620 USD, and the same drone for you to operate is about 2,000 USD to 2,256, then the question is, when will these technologies really get to the farmers and help them? That app that Dr. is, how does it get to the farmer? Are we really working enough to subsidize these technologies to be used by our farmers? And I know you asked earlier on, we have a lot of AgTech funding. The question is AgTech funding getting to the smallholder farmer, or are we only concentrating it at the level of large-scale farmers? So for me, I think on top of infrastructure, I think it's also about the cost and access of the devices that are supposed to be used. Asante, Daktari.
Access is important in the end of the day. So I think that really is a good place for us to segue to our second overall question. And this is the fact that, already alluded to. We are seeing, because of these systemic barriers, there's a lot more and more young people staying at the periphery, not joining the conventional system of innovation or technological development for digital agriculture. And I wanted to ask our next two panelists, and I'm starting with Dr. Bernadette Mutinda, who's a seasoned strategic leader and the current country manager at E4Impact Foundation. Dr. Mutinda, I'm curious about how you see this. How can governments and development partners better identify and support the scaling efforts of these young people to go towards digital agricultural space? Over to you, Dr. I think you are still on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Onyango. Just to say something brief about E4Impact Foundation. E4Impact stands for Entrepreneurship for Impact, and we do run a lot of programs that target the youth. We do run incubation and acceleration programs. We also implement a lot of community-based projects across Kenya. So we have had the opportunity actually to work with the youth. So in response to your question, I think I will build on what the other panelists have said. For sure, the youth, and I will take the example of Kenya, are very innovative. We have implemented quite a number of youth challenges, and the kind of innovations that are coming from the youth would really solve the problems that we have in Kenya. However, for this to happen and for us to be able then to reach more youth, I think there is number one, when you think about the government and what the development partners do, I think what we have seen is the importance of designing with the youth and not for the youth. Because when you design with the youth, then you are able to, come up with programs that resonate with them. And this would mean then when we are programming, then we have to be evidence-based, because what would work in one region may not work in another. I'll give you an example of a project that we're implementing across various counties. You would find that the lived realities in West Pokot were very, very different from the lived realities in Isiolo. So in this case, then the first thing that I would recommend is that for the government and development partners to better support, to identify, support, and scale the efforts of the youth, then we need to work with them, so that when we work with them, then we are able to come up with programs that will solve the problem of access, digital, literacy, and so on, and actually bring it home to the region that we are targeting. Number two, building on what the other team has said, there's always that need of, closing the digital divide. I think it was the doctor who's get her name, who spoke earlier, a study, she was citing a certain study that was done. And I've seen quite a number of studies that have also been done, collaborating the same findings. So in this case, I would think that when we're designing these programs, then we should be able to come up with end-to-end kind of programs that solve the problems that have been identified. And one of the challenges that I've seen with interventions in the field is that they tend to be light touch, in the sense that you try to solve one problem without comprehensively solving the problem. I would rather that you focus on a smaller target group and you do what we call deep touch, whereby you're coming up with end-to-end kind of solutions. If it is an issue of digital literacy, then you have the program addressing that. If it is an issue of access, then you have some funding, attached to the program to solve that problem, so that by the time you're done implementing that program or project, you're coming up with scalable solutions that can actually be replicated elsewhere. So I think that is one thing that the government and other actors on the ground can do. The other thing that I would say still on the issue of support, maybe building on what I've just said, is that sometimes we've seen actors, working from or using centralized approaches of reaching many targets or different locations. And sometimes it ends up being a light touch kind of a situation. So that brings me to the point of working with local networks. And these local networks could be youth-led organizations. It could be other partners on the ground that are working with the youth. I would recommend that for partners who have programs that they would want to reach more people and have sustainable impact, then they also work with the local communities. And the local communities, there would be partners that are already on the ground. Yeah. Lastly, I think there's also the issue of cultural inclusivity and the gender issue. And I think somebody already spoke to it. And I'll give a practical example of a program that we are currently implementing. You realize that when you're programming for women, for example, if you treat them the way you would treat a fellow young man, then you'll disadvantage the young woman, because as women, we have to take care of children, we have to take care of the household. So by the time I leave my house to go join a program that is being run in the local community center, you're already halfway gone. So it is also good to have those considerations for women. And of course, studies have also shown that women also have lower access compared to their male counterparts. So these are some of the things that I would highlight at this point. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mutinda, and for also highlighting different solutions for different people that E4Impact could also be contributing towards. And finally, we have, to hear from Dr. Christopher Ojeo, who is also a winner of the African Food Prize. So, I mean, that's something to start from. Christopher, you have been in this space for international agricultural research for some time. You are now leading the inclusive delivery area of work within the CGI space. Similar question, thinking about this space for digital agriculture, how would the government, how would development partners, how would they support and scale these efforts, considering how innovative some of these young people could be? Over to you.
Thank you. Let me follow the approach that the rest of the other colleagues have followed by giving a brief highlight of the institutions. I work for the CGIR, which is a consultative group for international agricultural research, having about 15 centers. And one of the centers is SAID, which is basically International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, but also involves or includes a lot of other crops, working across different countries in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America broadly. So I'll try my best not to replicate or repeat the answers that have been given by my colleagues in the interest of filling the gaps where they've already given answers. And I'll also try to broaden my examples beyond Kenya, because the examples that have been given have mostly been from Kenya, and being that we work from more than Kenya, beyond Kenya. I would want to give examples beyond Kenya. But let me start with examples from Kenya. And given that the question is about what governments can and should do with the youth networks, I'll start with the Kenyan example of Ajira digital platform, which basically identifies the youths, empowers them, working with them basically mostly informally. And many of these youths are basically self-taught freelancers and coders who partner also with the institutions to ensure that they get visibility. So in terms of a suggestion and recommendation of what government should be able to do is basically replicate this kind of skill building, embedding digital skills, mapping it into existing youth employment programs, working with well, in Kenya, we talk of county governments, but in other places, there could be regional or district governments to basically scout and identify the local talents. But then through various approaches like, hackathons, tech fairs, and peer nominations would then identify the skills and build them to be able to, identify where their skills are and build their capacities. I'll give examples also from a different place. In Ghana, there is an initiative by Cosmos Innovation Center that uses an approach of mentorship and business training, and also giving them seed funding, because funding is basically an issue. If you have the skills but you don't have the funds, then part of the skills will be buried. So you definitely people need seed funding. So essentially what the KIC or Cosmos Innovation Center does with the team is, after training and giving them mentorship and business skills, they also provide them with resources, then linking them to the local universities and youth groups to be able to get them to a little bit more formal. Most of them are not necessarily initially university graduates, but to link them then with the university graduates, university systems, and give them certification is a critical approach that then gives these people, the confidence that they're doing the right things. So micro grants and mentorship would be one of those things that I would also put as part of what governments should step in to do.
Yeah.
The third example I would give is from Nigeria. And in Nigeria, there is an institution called Tony Elumelu Foundation, which also combines several aspects of training, seed capital, and then working beyond the country, working beyond Nigeria, what we call in Pan-African networking. So that enables these beneficiaries not only to network within Nigeria, but also to engage with other business incubators beyond their country. And so I would guess part of what governments could, and other maybe development partners and donors, is identifying some matching funds, which government probably could put. In Kenya, there's something they've been calling Youth Fund, and I'm sure this is, I know Tanzania has it, and I know Nigeria has it. Youth Fund is that example that could be used to match these sort of resources that are coming from different sources, that enables them also to access this sort of technologies and scale them, and basically have these youth-led entrepreneurship approaches. Maybe in the interest of time, and because I see that you're pressed for time, just one more example, because I'm trying to spread out examples from different countries. An example from Rwanda is what they call Youth Connect Africa. And Youth Connect Africa is helping them, particularly the informal innovators and national youth, through national youth dialogues and entrepreneurship challenges, then connecting the grassroots efforts to the national platforms, and then to big companies. And big companies here would be like Google and other such companies. And so these people are not just trained locally, but they're also linked internationally with big companies. I guess that sort of engagement enables them to really move to great scales. Over for now for this round. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojeo. I think also emphasizing the connectedness, collaboration, and the potential to work together for the benefit of the young people. And I see one of the things in the chat is about it's about working with the young people, not without them. Focusing on the space that they have, designing for the youth and not for putting youth on the other side. So we will come back to the panelists, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll come back to also reflect on two main things. It's about design. How do we design youth empowerment programs from scratch? What will we not repeat from the experiences we've had? And we'll also be looking about the gender gap. I think that perspective has already been raised in different regards, but how do we then close that gender gap when it comes to skilling, when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially that builds a digital skills space towards transformation? I think these have been highlighted as some of the challenges, and we are looking at how do we then do it practically. Before we come back to the panelists, I want us to take a quick group conversation, and I think our tech team will be whisking us to different groups. And in these groups, you want to spend some time knowing each other, but importantly discussing these two fundamental questions. If you were to design a digitally inclusive and youth empowerment program from scratch, I mean, you had all the needs and the experiences you've had, what would it look like? And how would it be able to really and truly reach the last mile? And then the second question is what it really takes to close the gender gap. What are the practical things? And we'll have just about 10 to 15 minutes in the group to know each other, discuss these two questions, and then we come back with our panelists to also reflect on these questions as we go on with the session. I'll pass this over now to our tech team. Amanda, if you could just whisk us, and then we'll come back in a bit to reflect further. Thank you so much, everybody, so far. Okay, just taking a minute there. We'll be getting everybody to their rooms in a bit. But in the meantime, if you have a question to the panelists, you can already put it in chat, and we'll be going back to those questions when we return to this plenary session. So if you get assigned to the room, please just go ahead and join and introduce yourself, even as we pick out who will come back to us to report on the general discussions of each group. All right, thank you everybody for your patience, even as we get to the discussion groups. And I think in 10 minutes, we should be finished with the discussion groups, and we could come back to the general plenary to reflect further. Great, so I think many people have gotten assignments. I think we'll be opening the rooms now for 10 to 15 minutes discussions, and we'll give you a heads up when it's almost time to come back. Remember, the two questions that we are discussing are very practical. Is a design question that we need to explore.
Mhm.
Thank you everyone. I hope the conversations were resourceful. Welcome back to the main plenary. Some of the conversation were a bit cut short, but at this instant, I'd like to invite my colleague for the next bit of the conversation. And this is Noel. So there's Joel and Noel. So Noel will be facilitating the rest of the session. Noel is a seed system specialist and has been through different conversations in real world solution, especially that forge strategic partnerships, security, and community resilience. So I'll pass this over to Noel. Noel, thank you for taking this next session. Over to you for the group plenary.
Thank you very much, Joel, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope the group sessions were fruitful because we want to enjoy the fruits at this point. And in the process of getting to that, everyone had a chance to talk about designing a digitally inclusive youth employment program from scratch. I'm sure you reflected on these aspects, but I think it will be nice to hear in the next 10 minutes, we were 9 groups. So if you can take a minute from whoever your note taker was to just tell us what do you think was like the main highlight, for example, of the first question, how can we make these programs truly reach the last mile? So I will start with group 1. If you can just tell us to the first question what you found out.
Thank you.
Which
very
one was
much.
group 1?
Group one will be done by Chikondi and Amabel.
Okay.
Amabel.
Okay, Amabel, over to you.
Yeah,
Amabel,
hi.
yes.
Thank you, Noel. So for group 1, we had quite an interesting discussion, and it boiled around 3 main areas. First of all, human-centered approach, co-creation, objectives, and basically testing. So in human-centered approach, our group agreed that it was important to first of all understand the objective of who our audience are. It was one of the key things that we needed to identify. Who are the key players? Who are going to be the technology providers? Who are playing the target groups that we are working with, and what kind of communities are we bringing this digital technology? And the team also went ahead to discuss analyzing existing tools. So what does the audience want to see? The users, what do they want? What kind of problems do the audience want to resolve? And what kind of benefits do they want to derive from these tools? And the other thing was, which tools are already existing and why are they not solving the problem? And probably that is why we still think we need to create new tools to solve the problem. So it is important to understand why every existing digital tool and platform is not solving the problem. And do we need to integrate them? What do we need to do to ensure that existing solutions are already working before coming up with different solutions? And also in defining the problem, we wanted to involve the users, and more especially not just sitting in one corner as probably development financiers, as government agencies, as private sector, to develop, define problems in silos, but every user is brought on board. And most importantly, also thinking about the sustainability, maintaining these different digital tools and softwares. How do we sustain them? How do we maintain them? And also, how is it going to benefit? And is the tool really going to create jobs for the intended group, the youth? Is it really creating the job? Is it really ensuring inclusivity? So those are some of the things. And then finally, you want to test and be sure that your work is really serving the purpose for which it was, the tool is serving the purpose for which it was really created. And also making sure that you are doing this together with the local people in their local dialect, and also ensuring that you are leveraging on audios to ensure we have the right target group using the platform, not just reaching them, but them using the platform. I would end here, and then probably we'll leave it for the
as you can see, the groups have enough fruits, and I'm now suggesting that if there are any particular ones that you might have missed as group 2 tells us thing, list them as comments on. I've just posted something on the chat so that we don't lose a point. Group 2, if you don't raise your hand, then we'll move to group 3. Group 2, Fred, is that you?
Yes.
Chikondi.
Just one. Oh, it's Chikondi. Okay. Chikondi or Fred?
Yeah, thank you very much. In our group,
Just 1 minute, please.
in our group, we had discussed that when you're designing such digital solutions, there is need to consider that it doesn't have to have a lot of technology inbuilt within the platform, so that it can easily be accessible by the communities. And it has to be a platform that may need to be used or accessed offline. That doesn't have to be dependent on the internet, just to also reduce on the costs. But it has to embed local language so that they can easily use it. And the case that we're given was that of Nigeria, where they are having a startup tech, where they are using extension agents to reach out to the community. So sometimes it may be difficult to reach out to the last mile users themselves, but you can also engage the front line to reach out to the last mile consumers. And in cases of communities where women have challenges to access information in meetings or using gadgets like phones, because sometimes men wouldn't allow their women to have access to phones. There's need to engage women, young women, to engage such women. And in terms of inclusivity, we also have to bear in mind that there are other dimensions, not only women related, but disabilities, marginalized communities, hard to reach usually. How do we reach out to them? So we need to ensure that we design together with such people that are mostly excluded and test together with them before we launch such initiatives. I think in a nutshell, that's what we discussed. My colleagues are going to include in the chat what I've missed. Thank you.
Please, thank you, Chikondi. Group 3, you better tell us what your fruit is in a minute, because I will just cut. I'll cut the broadcast if you don't. Group 4. Okay, group 5. Let me see who is opening their mic. It seems like we didn't have group 3, 4, 5. Okay, group 6. All right. Wow.
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not sure what group we were, but I can speak about
we were in group
discussions that
6,
we had.
Dr. Mbaya. Yes.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Lillian. Okay. Yes, I think we talked about how to make sure that it gets to last mile is, first of all, co-design, and then make sure that it's context specific, because we realize that there's the urban versus rural. You might have an app or a solution that captures maybe the urban youth and their level of education or their level of understanding. Therefore, it should be context specific. And then there was also a discussion about working with local institutions, such as TVETs, for mentorship and training, or even cooperatives, which have been very strong in the farming, in the agricultural sector. Working with them and making sure that youth can be, trained in such settings. Then I think something that's also came very strongly was about having a tiered training. At the different level of a farmer. You could have an aging farmer, you could have a very young farmer, and then you also have women farmers, as has been described by the other groups. So you have a different kind of training for people at the different levels. And we had an innovator who talked about that we need to be very clear about the kind of targets that we are setting. So for example, if we want to have a certain number of agripreneurs, to reach a certain number of farmers, it needs to be very clear that, we want to, have a large impact. And so for us, we have to be very intentional with the numbers that we want to reach. Instead of just developing an app and saying we'll allow people to join, we need to be very intentional about, how to scale up this app. I think the other things have been mentioned. All right, thank you.
Right. Thanks. Actually, I feel like
I also don't remember my group, but I can mention a few things that the group said.
Okay, Chris. And then we'll shift gears.
The group, there was an example of a group from Malawi that is involved in digital marketing. And just in summary, one quick takeaway from that youth want something that makes money. Nothing is exciting without money. So if you get engaging people on digital technologies, ensure that is something that can bring money to their pockets. And also, they also don't want backbreaking things of carrying their goods and perhaps services to the local markets. They want also the payment to be made online. And the example that came here was M-Pesa, where they can sell online, they can receive their resources online or their funds online. In terms of examples, there was an example of Youth Connect from Rwanda. And in terms of reaching last mile, there was also Rwanda Smart Village, which is basically working around building solar technologies to the villages, internet access, and ICT in remote communities, akin to what used to be so something very close to what used to be cyber cafes in Kenya that was very, very, very popular. So if you get this in the local villages, then people have more access to the internet and be able to operate digitally. And then in terms of more gender or closing the gender gaps, there was one use of local languages in the tools, because quite a number of places you find the literacy level of particularly women is low, as the example that was also given from Malawi. If the tools can be accessed in local language, then they'll understand what they want to do with them, and then build literacy level, particularly for women. And the example here was again given that the trainer should be a woman. If you bring men to train women, then there's less inclusivity. They like to be trained by fellow women, but not men training them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. And I think in the spirit of just being on time, I wanted to take this moment to ask a specific direct question or a reflection from one of the panelists. Millicent, are you on call? Millicent?
Yes.
Okay. Just in 1 minute or 2 minutes, tell us what's your sense on this inclusivity aspect for the question where we are designing a digital inclusive youth employment program. I don't know which group you are in, but I'm sure you have some reflections.
Yeah, thank you. So for my group, I think we took the discussion to a slightly different approach. It was basically that how do we sit in, pause and reflect, because we already have most of these digital platforms in the region. So the team members felt that it would be interesting to come in and incentivize the young people who already have these smartphones that you're imagining probably they don't have access to. So basically, how do we empower them to come and use this platform to support farmers to register? And we know most farmers are not really digital literate. So coming in, registering them, then linking them with the different actors in the market for them to get that commission, because at the end of the day, they are looking for money. Then again, we are also looking at access to advisory services among our farmers. We discovered that in Africa as a whole, you'll find that one farmer, one extension officer has access to more than 4,000 farmers, which is way beyond the norm of one to at least less than 1,000 farmers. So again, how do we bring these young people on board to ensure that the agricultural extension advice is getting to our farmers? So I think the discussion from my group was basically we are not starting from scratch. At least many people have done this. How do we come in now to ensure that it's now working, if not based on lessons coming from the market? we're able to go back to these platforms and amend these platforms, if not refine it to the young people. Because we discover that as much as most of these platforms are being put in place, we were not very intentional to bring the young people on board. But because they're already there, how do we ensure that there's that sustainability model? And again, my reflection from the same was even bringing the private actors in the room, because I was just looking at the different members that are here. We discover that most of us are either working for a donor-funded project, if not for an NGO, but I was keen to look at, do we have these private actors like people from Hello Tractor, people from Safaricom, who are really coming in and sitting with us and saying, we have these platforms in place, but again, just to move it further, we need to ensure that we probably refine it from this approach. So I think even us as development partners sitting back in the room, we need to be very targeted to say, we are bringing young people to the table, but again, the platform developers are also coming in to really tell us that this is what we have, and to make it more encouraging, if not more acceptable among the young people, this is where we need to improve. So basically that was what was coming out from the discussion, if not from the group that I sat in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Dr. Bernadette, do you have 1.5 minutes reflections on the same question? And then I to Kamau and Chris on their reflections as well on the gender gap aspect. Dr. Bernadette?
Yes, thank you very much. Without repeating what has already been said, I would actually just highlight maybe 2 to 3 points that would summarize it all. I think when you think about agriculture, it still remains a last, course kind of a career choice for many youth, as it were. Studies still continue to show that it is considered a career of last choice for many youth. So for me, I think what I would take home, or the reflections that my reflection is that the human-centered approach would take center stage, because we can see different nodes within the value chain where the youth can plug in. So I think it would be then to just work with the youth, design with the youth, to see where exactly they would want to plug in. That's the first thing that I think I would do if I were to come up with such a program. And then number 2, because we keep on the, in our earlier discussion, we highlighted the challenges that are there, the challenge of access and so on. I would still hammer the point of having end-to-end kind of programming, so that we don't leave, midway and still leave the youth having kind of some sort of problem. So I would think about it from the training to access to the tools, being able to deploy them, and then linking them with the market. And number 3, for sustainability, I would think about public-private partnerships, so that the youth can be able to be plugged into various actors within the society that would enable them to scale their innovations and so on. And number 4, which I think is very, very important, is to work with the local institutions where these youth are at, so that they are able to reach more youth and at the same time mentor the ones that are already in our programs, so that there's that sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Kamau, this question on the gender gap, do you have particular reflections on how we can close it in a minute?
Sure. I think not really to repeat what have been mentioned initially. I think the issue of access to capital is coming out quite largely, especially in our works. You visit a farmer, you realize that the farmer has some cows. The cows are owned by the husband. The milk belongs to the wife. So as innovators, I think we have one startup called Space AI that we notice has built in something around that milk, whereby they say school fees for milk. The milk is delivered, kids are paid school fees for. And there's a lot of data going in whereby the woman knows how much liters of milk are brought in. There's trust. They know at the end of the month is how much I make. So this is equivalent to school fees. So number two is, I think, in terms of access to funding, and I'm thinking around, say, something like Women in Agri-Tech Fund, yeah, whereby the youth who are women get a fund whereby if they know if I have an idea and that can scale, then I know where to get that funding. Right now, I think that is lacking in the space, and then what normally happens is that some of these young innovators who are women bootstrap a lot, yeah, for them to be able to bring a solution to the market. So for me, I think more is cultural. How do they access capital? And importantly, action-wise, is do we create an agri-tech fund possibly for women? Thank you.
Chris, on the same question in a minute, what would you suggest as a way to close the gender gap?
Yeah, several examples already mentioned by our group about access to devices, connectivity, and energy in the rural villages, where most of the people that we want to close the gender gaps on are based. So let me not repeat that. But let me mention about socio-cultural norms and gender biases that normally affect women. Even when they have digital literacy, you still have some level of social resistance and sometimes even exclusion from digital opportunities. And there are many good examples of efforts to solve this. And an example here in Kenya is a group that has been implementing something called Akira Chicks. That's basically training young women in tech, but also providing them a sort of a mentorship and linking the graduates with the financial tech firms. So basically combining these skills and also community sensitization and solving the gender norms through dialogue and through action, I think is something that is worth considering. A lot has been mentioned about access to resources, both financial and physical, and let me not overemphasize that, but there are several examples also that I could give. And think about designing of tools and platforms that are women-friendly. We talked about in our group working in terms of using languages that they can access, but also linking them to markets. So digital platforms that are designed with women's needs and constraints in mind, such as language, interface simplicity, timing, or content delivery. And then the fourth one is basically integrating all these into value chains and markets. And an example already has been given on Hello Tractor, where women can basically, I would say, book for services using their smartphones and being able to implement what others would have been able to implement. The last one is basically thinking about digital safety and mobility and care responsibility. Because if you think in terms of traveling for women and caregiving, etc., women would be trained, for example, in activities that enables them to be safe, but still being able to implement some of the activities. Like I would say driving Uber border borders. It's not an easy space for women, for example, to drive Uber border borders. But something like that, which is being implemented in Uganda called Safe Border, basically training Uber border riders to integrate a safety feature that supports women mobility in this digital economy. I guess that should be all, besides what has already been mentioned about financial inclusion, which I also concur with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. I wish now to move towards the close of this session in terms of wrap up. And the question that I have for the panelists in this wise is, what has Africa got right in this area and why? And then if you can also add to that and say, are there good case studies that can be recommended? I know there are a couple that have been mentioned, but please note this is 2 minutes each. I will look at you straight in the eye if the 2 minutes are over. We'll start with Millicent.
Thank you, Noel. Oh, yeah, we appreciate that Africa is making progress when it comes to this. And just to give practical examples, most programs coming across Africa, you'll discover that from the design phase, we are being gender sensitive, where we need to come up with principles that are really inclusive, starting with the young people all the way to women and youth. Then At the end of the day, we've seen governments coming in strongly to ensure that the young people also brought on board when it comes to making decisions, if not policies, affecting the interaction, especially in a digital platform in agriculture. Just to come back to us, I know Kenya is really working towards having a digital public infrastructure, and we'll appreciate that Kenyan government has more than 40 digital platforms in the region. So we've seen really government coming in through the KIAMIS, coordinated by Carlo and the Ministry of Agriculture, trying to bring all actors on board to ensure that we have one dignified digital identifier for the farmers. So again, we are making progress. Come to private actors like Safaricom, Hello Tractor. You've seen them really embracing digital infrastructure to ensure that our farmers are paid immediately through M-Pesa. A Hello Tractor coming in through Internet of Things, just to ensure that our farmers are able to book for mechanization services digitally. We've seen other actors coming in to offer mechanization services run by the youth, where they work with things like maize shellers coming in through a digital platform. Farmers are able to book, then the machine is taken to that area. Then at the end of the day, the young people are getting commission. So we've seen both government and private sector really coming in to ensure that the young people are involved, not just from the policy aspect, but again, trying to incentivize the private actors towards having some of these models that enable young people to really come on board. So thank you. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you. I move to Kamau. Your 2 minutes of wrap up on the two questions. You can connect them in a minute.
So thanks, Noel. I think partly is I would start with what we are having here, is that we are starting to have a sober discussion whereby our youths are not seen as a demographic challenge, but they are seen as an economic opportunity. When you talk about agripreneurship hubs where youths are coming in, they are being mentored, they are being exposed to these technologies, and they are being, requested to go back to their communities and help adopt these technologies. I know I've seen an agripreneurship hub in Ghana. I've seen an agripreneurship hub in Nigeria. So we are having now a sober conversation and saying, our youth can actually, we are not sticking agriculture through their throats that, everything else has failed. Now agriculture is the only option. We are saying no. You can come into agriculture and bring in the innovation that comes with business, the creativity, and actually help improve incomes, including your own. I think for me, that would be a key takeaway. And I go back to what Millicent has also mentioned lightly. Earlier on, we discussed about, making internet access a sort of a public infrastructure. The same way water comes to the village, the same way electricity comes to the village. Why don't we take the same leadership role and take internet to the village, where access now to the apps is possible, access to IoT devices is possible, access to drones is possible. I think that would be my take, and this conversation has been very, very fulfilling. Asante. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bernadette?
Thank you very much. Can you see me? For me, I think what's happening, for me, I think what I would say is that we are beginning to design differently by putting into consideration what the youth would want and not what we think they want. So I think that is something that we are beginning to get very right.
Internet is choppy.
No, I can actually hear her.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe Dr. Caroline, you can step in as
Bernadette.
Bernadette sorts her connection.
No, Noel, she's very clear to us. Perhaps it's your end.
Yes, actually, we can hear her.
Yeah,
she's
very loud and clear.
Side.
Okay, so I can proceed.
Okay.
Yes,
proceed.
Yeah,
proceed.
I can proceed. Thank you very much. So I was saying, I think what I would say is what we are getting right at the moment is our programming is beginning to shift. It's no longer top down, but right now we are beginning to listen to the ground, to work with the youth in mind and listen to them. I think that is good progress. In terms of public-private partnerships, I think we've seen that also take shape. We are seeing a lot of youth innovation challenges that are being funded either by governments and the private sector, and that has played a critical role in attracting the youth to look at agriculture with new eyes. So I think for me, those are two good things that I would mention. And of course, we've seen some policy strides that have been made by various governments. I would mention mine. Here in Kenya, I think we have the Kenya Youth Agribusiness Strategy. From 20, I think it's from 2021 or 2020 to 2025 that outlines how they can bring in the youth into the sector. So those are some of the things that I would mention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chris?
Oh, sorry, I was ready to go, but
Okay, please, ladies first, and we wrap it up.
okay. All right. Yes, I think I can say what we have is a youth that is so flexible to adapt to high tech levels, and how that has manifested itself, unfortunately, is through hacking. I think there's been a lot of hacking, but in the good side, we've seen a lot of youth who have adopted digital technology, especially the creative economy. We have a very vibrant creative economy in Africa. So why is it that we can't turn this then to agricultural sector? And I think this has been mentioned that, there's no draw in the agricultural sector, that people don't feel there's a profit, maybe compared to the creative economy. And so it's very important, to sort of have influencers, to influence young people into agriculture and adopting technology and showing them that this is actually an area where they can thrive. Because if we look at the fact that a lot of rural youth are actually also creating content, of course, we do need to improve on our connectivity, and but you see that a lot of people are creating content, for enjoyment. That means they can still use the same, connectivity to access digital information, or to tap into digital solutions. So we just need to make sure that agriculture is a go-to end game for young people. Thank you.
Good. Chris, you have the last 1 minute to finish this, I think.
Okay, so quick ones. One is, well, the question is, what is Africa getting, right? I think leveraging widespread mobile phone penetration at the moment to be able to link to information, markets, and jobs. And examples, eSoko, that is, I think, in Kenya, in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Burkina, several countries have adopted these for purposes of delivering information, for example, on market prices, on weather forecasts, on agronomic tips via different approaches such as SMS and voice messages, as well as WhatsApp messages in local languages. I think that's something that Africa's got right. Agri-tech platforms for creating youth agents and networks, and I don't want to overemphasize the example already given of Hello Tractor for booking services using mobile apps. I'll leave that alone. It's been mentioned over and over. I would also give example of e-commerce platforms. And again, there's several examples of e-commerce platforms that I could give an example here in Kenya, where I would give the example of Trigger Foods, but there are several other e-commerce platforms that we know about and that youth have quite easily engaged in, and very, very actively involved, and the governments are supporting them on that. National level digital literacy and skills programs like the Ajira digital platform for Kenya, where the ministry is involved in training youths and giving them digital skills and providing online jobs. I think those are some examples that I could quickly give in the interest of time, but there are many more that we could cite here beyond the examples I've given, the Ethiopian cases, the Tanzania cases, Nigeria cases that we could all cite. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris, for finishing that on a high note. I take this opportunity to thank you all for participating in this session. I hope you found them fruitful. I hope you learned a thing or two. And I am really asking you not to stop the efforts towards making Africa the powerhouse of digital agriculture. And with that, I want to hand it over to my colleague, Joel, co-facilitator Joel, who will take us to the next stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noel. Really a good conversation, and thank you for all the panelists. Millicent, really great insights that you provided there based on your space. Bernadette, really super useful comments and suggestions, and really impactful conversation have happened. Chris, your examples have been exemplary. I think touching on different contexts, different regions, and Caroline, of course, thinking truly about how these spaces and gaps actually can be bridged in a practical sense. Kamau, really brilliant, having conversations on real tech issues and how it merges with different conversations that we've had. I think with that, I'd like to thank you so much, the panelists, for taking your time and for honoring us with the presence in this conversation. And for the delegates, I hope you've gotten something out of this conversation, even as we continue with the conversations that we are going to have. And as we close this session, we'd invite you to take a short break. We'll be coming back in 5 minutes to join the next session that is focusing on building a digitally savvy agricultural workforce, which really ties into what we've just been discussing about skilling, reskilling, youth empowerment, and employment. Thank you very much, everybody, and I do wish you a great rest of the sessions. And thanks, Noel, for co-facilitating this great conversation into the future of employment and young people. Thank you, and wish you a great evening.
You're welcome.